Hello and welcome back to Mystery in Time, Air Hug, where we dig deep into the world's most historical cold cases. That's right, you ain't getting away with it. Cue intro. Hi, my name is Anne and I will be your guide through this case, the Manhattan Well murder, which happened way back in 1799. Now, if you haven't already done so, check out episodes 1 and 2 in the playlist and that'll get you caught up to speed. And if you want to, the link to the entire trial of the People versus Levi Weeks is in the description box down below. Love to hear your input, as always. Keep it coming, whether you choose to talk to me through Facebook or in the comment section down below, or give me an email. I'd love to hear what you think so far. Let's get cracking. Okay, so let's get into a quick recap of everything we've found out so far. The body of 22-year-old Elma, who had previously resided at 208 Greenwich Street, Manhattan, was found at the bottom of the Manhattan Well on 2nd of January 1800. The Manhattan Well was located on a piece of marshland called the Lispenard Meadows, which was then on the northern outskirts of New York. The body of young Elma was taken to a building adjacent to the Manhattan jailhouse, where an autopsy was performed by two experienced doctors in front of a jury, a Dr. Prince and a Dr. McIntosh, who concluded that Elma's injuries consisted only of a small bruise, abrasion to the knee, a small dollar-sized bruise on the left breast, and an amount of water in the lungs. Furthermore, they were also very clear on the fact that there were no injuries or marks of violence upon Elma's neck at the time of the inquest. Following the inquest, Elma's body was taken to 208 Greenwich Street, where she had previously lived with her aunt and uncle, Catherine and Elias Ring, both of the Quaker community. Her body was laid in a coffin and put on display for the masses. Thousands, and I mean thousands, of Manhattians had amassed to view, poke and prod Elma's body, driven by curiosity and rage. Rage which was fueled by nothing more than unsubstantiated rumours and idle gossip. They declared that Levi Weeks, Elma's lover, is the culprit. He strangled her and threw her down the well. Look! See here the marks around her throat that prove it. Among these thousands stands three community doctors, Dr. Richard Skinner, Dr. James Schnideker, and Dr. David Hossack. It is their evidence we will now examine. Dr. Skinner gave his evidence at the trial of the People versus Levi Weeks on Tuesday, the 1st of April, 1800, at the City Hall in New York. Dr. Skinner, who, let's get one thing straight, was not, in actual fact, a doctor, nor, to be fair to him, did he profess to be. He plainly stated that he was a dentist who had made the subject of surgery his general interest. It was the Assistant Attorney General, Mr. David Colden, counsel for the prosecution, who had insisted on referring to Skinner as a doctor, as if trying to elevate him to the status of an expert. But nonetheless, we must still consider Mr. Skinner's evidence. I saw the corpse of the deceased twice. I had but a superficial view, however, of it, as it lay in the coffin, exposed to the view of thousands. I examined such parts as were comatable, such as her head, neck, and breast. I discovered several bruises and scratches, particularly a bruise upon the forehead and chin, and upon the left breast or near it. Mr. Skinner then goes on to describe what he saw in more detail. Firstly, he said he saw several small reddish black spots on the neck, which he took to be marks of compression by hand. Or maybe they weren't. Or possibly they were. We'll come back to that later. He then goes on to say, evidence which is not contested by anybody, that Elma did not have a broken neck. She did have a bruise on the left breast, a bruise on the forehead, and a bruise on the chin. Levi Weeks' defence consisted of three prominent gentlemen of the time, a Mr. Alexander Hamilton, Mr. Aaron Burr, and Mr. Henry Livingston. So here's why I have a problem with Skinner's evidence. You remember Colden asked him earlier how he felt the marks around Elma's neck were made, right? And he said that he felt they were made by compressions of the hand, around the throat. So the defence team, you've just met them, Hamilton, Burr, Livingston, then stood up and asked specifically how he felt the marks around Elma's neck were made. And I want to get this right, so I'm going to put on my glasses. He stated that he was incapable of judging how they might have happened. There must have been smiles all around the defence team, because from Skinner's own mouth, he had merely proven he was not an expert on the matter and quite incapable of concluding how those marks around Elma's neck were made. Colden undoubtedly didn't think his next question through too well, because almost as if I can only imagine it was a last-ditch attempt at trying to save Skinner's evidence, he re-questioned him, specifically on the marks again, and you guessed it, Skinner changed his evidence again and said he thought that if a person had been strangled by hand, then it would have left such an appearance on the body. Taxi for Skinner. Next up is Dr. James Snedecher, who was 28 years old, and he definitely was a doctor. He was a resident in Barley Street, Manhattan, New York, and he examined Elma's body on the second or third day after it had been pulled from the well, which now puts us on 13 to 14 days of decomposition. When James, and I'm going to say James, not Dr. Schnideker, because it's really hard for me to say, When James examined Elma, he thought that the left collarbone was broken and there were many dislocations in the area. He said that her fingers appeared to have been scratched from the knuckle down. And he said he also saw a mark upon her left breast as big as $1. It was black and blue, and on hearing that her neck was injured, he examined it but did not find it to be broken. And that is James's evidence. No real issues with that, apart from the fact that, he said there was many dislocations of the collarbone, or around the collarbone. I think we've already established that that was not the case during the coroner's inquest. So whatever happened, you make up your own mind, it happened after the inquest. Okay, so we'll move on. Next up is Dr. David Hossack, and he stated that he saw Elma's body on the same day it was interred, and he went with many others to see the body. As it lay exposed in the coffin, he noted that the Elma's corpse had an unusual redness of countenance, and she had 3 or 4 dark coloured spots on the neck. So let's talk about David Hossack's evidence, because it's quite funny, but I want to see you face to face. So let's talk about David's evidence. The unusual redness of countenance, they felt was due to sudden extinction of life, and the 3 or 4 dark coloured marks around Elma's neck, he felt was the result of sudden pressure. Now, he also said that he didn't feel that Elma could have done this to herself, and I am absolutely delighted that the prosecution saw fit to establish that Elma did not choke herself to death and then throw herself down the well and drown. Fantastic. Well, as you can imagine, Hamilton Burr did not let that one go, and they called Hossack back to give evidence following the expert witnesses, Dr. Prince and Dr. McIntosh, and they asked Dr. Hossack to account. And he stated, well, actually, I might be wrong. One of 2 things is possible regarding the marks on Elma's neck. One, that they weren't visible at the time, and through the process of putrefaction they became visible. Or that, with all those thousands of people poking and prodding at Elma's body, examining it, we know at least 3 doctors did it, that they might have damaged Elma's neck and collarbone and caused the dislocations. So, I mean, me personally, that's the one I lean towards. Definitely the bruising, if you want to call it bruising, and injuries were caused after death, when all these people were viewing and moving her. You see, at the time, the people of Manhattan believed that Elma was violently assaulted, and it's really little wonder, because, these marks were on her neck, and everybody just pointed and said, those marks are on her neck. This proves she was choked to death and then thrown down the well. But what they didn't take into account was the expert witness statements, the coroner's report that showed she had water in the lungs. And really it's little wonder she suffered injuries after death, because she was 13-14 days in putrefaction, and all those people poking and prodding at her, yeah, these injuries were caused after death. It was death by drowning.